Hello and welcome to this longer live than usual by quite a long stretch. Normally I do group sessions via Zoom, but have opted to go live onto the group today because the idea of doing this was to also get some additional people in the group. So I've had some requests for invites and what have you. So I've been letting people into the group over the last few days. So if you are somebody who shared the session or shared the group with somebody else, thank you very, very much. It's lovely to see you guys here. I'm just waiting to see, I've got 51 people who have signed up for this. And obviously a lot of people will watch the live, but I'm just waiting to see if I get the live numbers over the most I've ever had on live, and I can confirm that yes I have. So hello. All I can see at the moment is the lovely Kirsty is with us. Kirsty, you're the only name that's popped up, but I can see that I've got more people than that. So pop in a hello, tell me that you are joining me live, and obviously if you're watching this on replay, if you watch the video on that I send by email, then you won't be able to comment. But if you are watching it back on the page, then you will be able to. So say hello. It would be lovely to see who has watched. I can see a Tanya. Hello, lovely. Hope you're okay. I'm just going to be sort of meeting and greeting for a couple of minutes so that we get as many people in as possible before we actually start. Hi Leanne, hi Katie Jane, hope you're okay. You've been quite poorly recently, haven't you, Katie Jane? I hope you're much better now. Hi to Lisa as well. Hello, lovely. Yes, I'll get back to your message later on. Hi Maria, lovely to see you as well. This is exciting. I'm in double figures of people watching me, which is not remotely nerve-wracking at all. Actually, no, it's not. I was really nervous before I came on, but now I'm on and now it's all happening. I'm all good. Hello, Katie. Lovely to see you here as well. Hello, Catherine. Gosh, all these names. It's lovely to see you all joining me live. Millie, of course, is here with us as well. Millie, you will know if you are on the page regularly that she is quite a usual addition to the post. I won't pick her up because she'll shout at me if I do, and then you'll be like, oh my goodness. But normally she's to be seen. Oh, I've left my makeup bag up there. Normally she's to be seen on the windowsill, chatting and just whilst I'm chatting, making sure I'm doing it all right. Who else have I got? Hi Tracy, hi Sarah, lovely to see you both. Very excited about this evening's session. Now, having had a think about some of the things that I've done on here before, I was aware that actually maybe I had made some of the things so complex in trying to throw as much value to you as possible. So I thought, let's try and simplify. Let's try and get this down. And hopefully then it will be incredibly clear. I've got a workbook to send to you tomorrow that I'm just making some finishing touches to. I haven't completed it because sometimes stuff comes up in the session that I think, oh, actually that would be good to add in. So it's nearly there, but not quite. Katie Jane, both mentally and physically poorly, honey. Not perfect yet, but on the mend. That's good. Hi, Nina. Lovely to see you. That's absolutely fine if you need to catch up on replay for a bit of it. That's not a problem at all. So have we got pens and paper ready? You don't need to take notes or anything if you don't want to, because the workbook will come out to you tomorrow. I'm going to be intermittently supping a cup of tea, so I hope you've got something nice with you as well. I did consider Prosecco, but thought maybe that was a little bit early and people wouldn't take too kindly to that. So I thought I'll just stick with tea and some gin. Right, shall we get a crack in? So I think a lot of you do know who I am and know me, but we have got some newbies as well. So I'm just going to do a little intro into me. And yes, I do need my notes for that. So look, you can see how much more simplified and straightforward today will be, because look, my cards aren't that thick today. So hopefully you will find this straightforward. Obviously, always looking for feedback. So anything you can tell me, let me know. And as always, chat to me as we're going along. I will pick up comments as much as I possibly can. It's a manageable amount to be able to pick up your comments. So yeah, do ask questions. Do comment on what I'm talking about, whether it resonates with you, all those kinds of things as you go through. It also helps to encourage me that what I'm saying is interesting rather than talking to sort of quietness. Hello, Lindsay. Do you really want to come on screen with me? I'm not sure that you might have just done that by accident. You're more than welcome to, so let me know if you do. Okay, so tonight is about simple self-care planning. And the reason that I wanted to do this, let's start off with that. The reason I wanted to do this is because I've been having some conversations with people, particularly that I was networking with. And a really interesting thing came out, which was that basically some people feel that they are too busy for self-care. But it was quite abundantly clear that perhaps some people just didn't really understand exactly what it is. So one particular person said, do you know what, Sarah, sometimes a bubble bath's not going to cut it. And I was a little bit like, hold on, this isn't about going and having a bath. Having a bath is lovely. If it works for you, absolutely fantastic. Oh, we've got another joiner. Hi, Emma. Absolutely lovely. Really, really nice to go and have a bath if that's what floats your boat, if that's what is going to start to fill your cup up a bit again. All of those things, absolutely lovely, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But what I want to be very clear on is what self-care is really about in terms of the depth of things that you can go into if you want to really feed your soul and start to improve how you're feeling. So there was a lot more around it than this first thought. I think self-care has become a term that we've talked about in the pandemic, but maybe there's been a bit of loss of translation in there somewhere as well. So, I'm Sarah. I'm the accredited life coach of Coastal Coaching. I have been running the business now for about a year and a half. I was lucky enough that in the pandemic, when my job went part-time, which at the time I can assure you didn't feel particularly lucky, I was able to look at other options of what I was going to do. Had always wanted to do coaching. I'd done it corporately, but because of my own issues that I've had in my life, I really wanted to create my own practice one day. But it always seemed to be one of those things that I would talk about, but would probably never get the opportunity to do. So in the pandemic, when everybody was on Zoom, when people were struggling and taking stock and really thinking about things, there was an opportunity. So I thought I'll just have a few clients alongside the job that I was doing. Didn't really like actually that's not true. I liked the job. I didn't like the company I was working for. I didn't like the culture that was there. It was not a good place for me to be in. So when this opportunity came up, I decided I'd give it a go. And within 6 months, I was able to give up my part-time job in order to focus 100% on the business, which is what I've been doing since. And I'm always learning, I'm always developing, and I'm always listening. So I'm always listening to kind of what's going on in conversations around well-being, what's going on for people in terms of what they're taking stock of, all of those sorts of things. So I try to kind of listen to what is on the ground and then create something useful for you. I'm aware that I haven't done that in a little while. I haven't done a group session for a little while, but lots of other things going on and lots of other things that I'll talk to you about another day. So my story started in terms of toxic relationships when I was young. I had a very great start to my childhood, but when we moved to Sussex when I was about 9, that's where things started to go quite difficult, and that resulted in a long-term toxic relationship with my parents, which was really, really difficult. That in turn resulted in me not really being ready for adult relationships, and I made a lot of wrong decisions. I attracted a lot of the wrong men. Some of you on here will know how wrong some of those were. And for me, it was about then when I left that abusive marriage that I was in, it was about doing a 360, making a massive change and going, actually, I can't go on like this. I can't continue that way. So what I then did was I'd already had quite a few experiences of counselling, so had some more experiences of that. For me, then it felt like coaching was the better way to go. Coaching was really important because it was about building women back up again. So not just focusing on the past, but actually focusing on their future and how they could improve their lives as a result of it. So I'll tell you a bit more about that later. What I would like to know to start off, to give you a little question to start you off with, is how good are you at looking after yourself? That will take a few minutes to come up, so I will start talking about self-care and what I see self-care to be. So when I was putting this part together about what is self-care, I was thinking, okay, so what are the definitions? And there's about 1 million definitions that come up. And I was like, no, I've said I want to keep this as straightforward and simple as possible. So I've ended up with self-care is self-improvement and understanding the need to take care of yourself to serve others. So I'm not talking about living in a life of servitude. I'm just talking that naturally there are things that we have to get done. Perhaps we've got children to look after. Perhaps we've got somebody that we care for. Perhaps we've got jobs. Perhaps we've got a business. There's all sorts of things. So what have we got? Leanne's gone with a very honest rubbish. Katie, honest answer, I was terrible until I started doing things that I love for me. Lindsay, better than I used to be. Excellent. Emma, pretty rubbish. We are often bottom of our list, aren't we? Lisa, better than I was, but when things go wrong yet again, I become reclusive and don't care as much for myself as I should. Yeah, absolutely. When the chips are really down, we generally do one of two things. We either go, fuck it all, I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to wallow. Or we do, oh, I haven't paid too much time to self-care. Now I need to do lots, but actually when everything feels good, I don't bother doing anything at all. And so, Katie's just said, great when I'm well, not great when I'm down, which is the time I need it most. Absolutely, absolutely. When we are feeling down, that means that actually we've been given a hell of a lot of warning symbols that we're about to struggle, but we haven't listened to any of them. And generally what happens is we start off with not paying any attention to it, bam, we go down with something. So a couple of weekends ago, I had really bad food poisoning, which was kind of my own fault through cooking out of date sausages, which I didn't realise. But I was really poorly with it, and looking back on it when I was sort of reflecting on how poorly I'd been, I'm sure some of it was basically my brain saying, well, now that you've stopped, I'm really going to make you stop, because we don't really pay attention to all of the sort of the mental symptoms that we get, but we do pay attention to that really bad headache that we can't shake off, or feeling really under the weather and feeling like we ought to go to bed, or a temperature. And that's what our body does. If we don't listen to the hints and tips that it's giving us, then actually very, very difficult. Nina, hate looking after myself, love supporting and looking after others, probably use this to distract myself from what's going on. Why won't he let me? Oh, what's going on for me? Sorry, it was just a bit tricky trying to get the Seymour bit. Yeah, absolutely. So we focus on everybody else, because then we don't need to think about what's going on for us. That's a really, really good point, and I will pick that up a little bit later. Okay, so who do you serve? Who is it that you need to look after on a regular basis? Maybe, I was giving some examples earlier, but maybe you've got like a neighbour that you help to look after, or maybe there's just somebody that you feel that you've got to be okay for, because if you're not okay, they're definitely not going to be okay. So who is it that you are there to look after? Who is it that making sure that you are okay means that you can then look after these other people in your life? The thing to remember is that you are your biggest and only resource. If you don't have the ability to be okay, there's a lot of other things that kind of go down as well. So if you are caring for somebody, for example, if you are not able to do that, then actually, you know, what happens then? Who comes in and takes over? There's probably nobody. Yep. Your partner, absolutely. So sometimes we have a caring responsibility for a partner that we've got in our lives, and if we go downhill, then sure as eggs is eggs, they're going to go downhill as well, and we can't allow that to happen. But what generally happens is we end up running on almost empty all of the time, instead of keeping our cup full, overflowing really, to be able to support the other people that we need to. We're always too tired, not able to do it, certainly not able to put ourselves further up the list. But actually this is about switching it around and understanding that unless you look after you, how are you going to look after the other people in your life? So what things don't happen when you are dealing with having to look after yourself because you physically had to stop? So Leanne says you have 3 autistic children and your partner that you have a caring responsibility for. So actually 4 people are relying on you being okay. So if at any point you miss that mark and you end up physically not being able to do it, that's 4 people that's going to affect. Evie, my elderly mother. Absolutely. If you're not able to get out because you're physically unwell, then actually that's going to be a big problem. Katie Jane, my 3 teenage girls all sitting exams in 6 weeks. Oh, I bet your house is delightful at the moment then. There's a lot of stress that kind of goes around with sitting exams and what have you. But again, if you are rock bottom, the girls are going to then really struggle as well, aren't they? in my eyes, everyone else except me. So Lindsay, you literally are saying that you are very much bottom of the list when it comes to looking after yourself. But again, if you have to physically stop, if something happens and you physically stop, that's really going to have an impact. And the idea of self-care is to make sure that your body either gives you the signals and you're able to read them to kind of make time for that self-care, or that the self-care actually is such a predominant part of your life and your schedule that you're going to do it anyway, so you don't need to listen and watch for those warning signs. But yeah, we can quite often feel like we're really, really, really caught up by looking after everybody else, but not ourselves. So one of the questions in the book is, what's going to happen if you don't look after yourself and you stop? It's going to affect all of these other people as well as you. And that's never a good thing. However, let's look at this a little bit differently. So let's say you put yourself at the bottom of the list and there's other people that you're looking for. If you are always at the bottom of the list and you don't think about the care that you need, you're actually not allowing any of those people to show you any nurturing that they've got. If you say to them, I can't do this, or I need your help with this, or there's a reasonable thing that you could do to help me achieve X. If you don't do those things to sort of protect your energies in place, all that you are teaching them is that actually it's okay for you to come last. All that you are teaching them is that I will always sort you out, but don't worry about me, I'm not actually that important. So you're missing the ability to help them nurture. And that's really important. So let's say, for example, if this is relating to children, they at some point might go on to have their own families or their own partners. And it's really important that they understand looking after each other and nurturing. If you've always run around after them, how is that going to affect, their future relationships? It's just going to be so difficult for them to understand that that's a really key part of a relationship. And they may lose important relationships in their life because they've never understood and nurtured these skills. Oh, hi Susie, lovely to see you, lovely. So all of those things are really, really important. And like I said to you before, if you don't make time for your well-being, if you don't make time for self-care, you'll absolutely make time for illness, whether that's physical or mentally unwell. You will have to book that time at some point. So why not preempt it? Why not keep doing little things for yourself here and there? And they don't have to be things like taking a whole day out to go to a spa, for example. Expensive, time consuming. It's about being a bit more clever than that for it. Also, if you are always doing things for other people and they never do anything back, I've talked extensively about we feel that if we give, we get. But the reality is we never, ever, ever receive what we're giving in the first place. So, that's not, we think that that's what's going to happen, but it absolutely isn't. There's no way that that's what happens. So then we start to build up resentment. So, for example, with the situation with my husband and I, he works a lot, so he's out of the house a lot. But sometimes when I'm at home and I'm doing things and what have you, and then he's at home, but I'm still doing things, that can really build up resentment. And there's a part of me, fairly childish part, going, I don't want to have to ask him. But the reality is actually if I just asked him, he'd probably get up and help me. Sometimes he'd say do it later and not do it, but that's a whole other story. But I'm not encouraging him to understand that I need looking after sometimes as well, unless I'm actually saying, look, I'm really struggling to get all of this done, can you help me with X, Y and Z? So it's really important that in the relationships that you've got, that you allow them to help you as much as they can. Now, sometimes when you're caring for somebody, there are things that they cannot do, but sometimes there are things that they can. Leanne, I hope you don't mind me sharing that we've been talking about sort of boundaries and acceptable behaviour and what have you recently. And that's actually paid off dividends for you because you've put some boundaries in place and those boundaries are now being met, feeling like you have got a bit more energy, you can do some things, but actually that you're empowering the other people in your life to actually do some things for themselves as well. So really important. It does work. And also, if we only do self-care intermittently, it doesn't become part of our lives. So if we only do it intermittently, it's not part of our lives. We don't actually we do feel guilty when we actually do it. Whereas actually, if it's part of our routine and we're putting these little bits in here, there and everywhere, then actually that's really important, because it becomes part of your routine. It becomes second nature, and then you don't feel the guilt around doing that. Katie, I've started to do that a lot more now, but I had a long time where I didn't ask him to do anything. But again, that's only setting a precedent that it's okay for you to do nothing. I'll do it all, don't worry. And even if at first they feel a bit guilty about doing that, eventually they'll be like, well, that's just the way she is. You know, one of the things that Matt has probably stopped saying now, based on the feedback he was getting, is, oh, I thought you liked doing that. No, there are really no chores around the house that I absolutely love to do. Not a one. If somebody did them all for me, I would be a very happy bunny. So let's now move on to the steps. So there are 3 steps to decent self-care in your life, and I'm going to take you through each one. So for anybody making notes, step 1, acknowledgement and awareness. Oh, hold on, interrupting for a second. Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes we don't like to ask our partner because they may be struggling too, but equally you could struggle through it together rather than one of you taking on vastly more than the other one, and then the resentment building and what have you. So yeah, obviously there is an element, but it's about thinking, what could they do? What could they help me with that's in their capability at this particular moment? So maybe it's about assessing each individual thing to see, what the situation is. Okay, so the 3 steps: acknowledgement and awareness is the first one. The second one is inspired action. And the third one is creating the habit. Okay, so you can't make decisions about what's relevant for you for self-care without having some awareness of what would work for you and what's going to make things much easier for you. If you know what's going to make things better but you don't do it, that's why the inspired action is a key part of it. And if you don't create a habit out of it and it's just once in a blue moon, it's really only going to be worth it for the time that you're doing it. If you keep forgetting to do it, then actually it's not going to improve your well-being. It's not going to kind of tick all the boxes that self-care should. So the awareness, the action, and then the habit are all really key points in actually making self-care happen. So the first question that I would like to ask you is, what happens if you don't make a change in terms of your self-care? What is going to happen if you carry on the way that you are going at the moment by not putting yourself first, not putting yourself higher up the list, and not asking anybody else that is around you for help that they can give? What is going to happen to you then? So have a little think about that and tap some things into the comments so that I can comment and pick up on those as well. So burnout, absolutely, Katie. If you are not looking after your well-being, burnout. And for me, that is really very much the most likely scenario that I'm going to have, because I'm very guilty of push. And if I find time, like after being poorly the other weekend, today I tasked myself with something, and then when I got to it and I had time left over, I decided to have some lunch, which actually I don't sit down and do enough away from the laptop. And the other thing is that I decided to watch a television programme for half an hour instead of sitting and looking at my laptop, and actually felt so much better for it. So what's going to happen? We've got Katie saying burnout, Lisa saying burnout, I feel it's coming, to be honest. Well, Lisa, this could not be better timed for you to sort of have a real think about what you're going to put in place for your own self-care plan. Leanne, crash and burn. Lindsay, depression. Tracy, you go further into the darkness. Absolutely. So if you are already balancing that sort of mental illness, that means you can get to quite a dark place, actually it's going to take you further down rather than empowering you to come back out of it. Extreme anxiety as well. Absolutely. It's 100% important that we make time for these things. So as part of acknowledgement and awareness, burnout is like this bulldozer in our lives, isn't it, really? It's so easy to kind of get to burnout and really struggle to see it coming, and we really have to pay attention to the warning signals for us, which I'll talk to you a bit about in a later part of the session when I'm talking about what happens on a bad day. So This will be set out in your workbook, but just want to talk you through the things that I want you to do. Katie Jane, I ended up in bed for 5 days last weekend. Just 2 of those days I just laid there. Yeah, and doesn't that, I mean, at the time, probably there was absolutely nothing else that you could do. But then, and it's nice to stop sometimes, isn't it? It's nice to just have that thing where you're like, I just can't. And then you get some extra sleep and all that kind of thing. But equally, it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating to feel that that's kind of wasted time a little bit. Can you send us 2, please? Oh, yes, of course. Sorry, I was thinking, what does that mean? But you mean 2 workbooks, don't you? Yes, I will definitely send the email twice to you so that you've got 2 of them. That's not a problem. Okay, so the first one that you'll be looking at filling out is the categories of your life. So I would recommend no more than 8 categories. So they will be things like work, partner, children, hobbies, family, friends, anything else that's really, really important in your life. And then what I want you to do with each of those is give them a score out of 10. Oh, Katie Jane, it was terrifying. Yes, I bet it was, because you feel like you're never going to be better, do you? What I would like you to do then, once you've sorted out the 8 important areas of your life, is to work out in terms of self-love where you categorize yourself. So let's say, for example, your partner takes up the vast majority of your time and energies, for example. So when it comes to your partner, how much self-love do you give yourself to make sure that you are always overflowing to be able to serve them? So you then score it out of 10. 10 if you think, actually, I give myself lots of self-love in order to be able to help this person. Obviously 0 is actually I'm really rubbish. They always come first and I forget that there are things that I can do to protect my energies. So go through all of those and that will give you a really good idea, a really good scale about where you are with each of those things in terms of how much of your energy it takes, how much you struggle with those areas in terms of making sure that you're keeping your cup full. And that will give you a starter as to which you need to look at first. So if it's your kids, if you're forever giving to your kids, are you actually doing them any favours? Probably not. Even if they're really little, all children can do certain things for themselves. So let's say, for example, so one of my clients a little while ago, her daughter was still demanding to be dressed in the morning, which meant that she was so stressed out because she got a little one to look after and get him all ready and what have you, and was still doing that as well. And actually, through the course of the sessions, we were able to get her to dress herself so that it wasn't such a stress in the morning. Plus, this little girl who'd been demanding her mum of it suddenly felt like quite a grown-up that she was able to get herself dressed. So think about what can your children do really that would be age appropriate for them to be able to do for themselves, because it's important that they learn some forms of independence. Okay, so you've got the categories of your life and you've looked at what you've scored each of those to give you an idea of where you need to focus your thoughts first. Okay, now the next thing that I want you to do is to take a piece of paper. Here's one I made earlier, or not, as the case may be. Talk amongst yourselves. There it is. Okay, so just want you to take an A4 piece of paper. It can be in a notebook, but it's easier if it's not. It's easier if it's loose. And I want you to take said paper and fold it in half. Okay. And then you open it out and now this is mirrored. I can't work out which way is which, but for you, on the left side, you write want. And on the right side, you write don't want. Okay, now you have to do the don't want side first. So these are feelings and behaviours that you don't want anymore. So you might say, for example, I don't want to feel exhausted anymore. Or you might say, I don't want to carry on doing the football run each week. Or you might say, I don't want to be the one who does the shopping every week, or I don't want to feel isolated in my life. Whatever you don't want to think, feel, be, have, or do, essentially. It's really important that you do the don'ts first, because working out what we want is actually really hard, but working out what we don't want is so much easier. So if you can go through and work out the things that you don't want, and then on the other side of that piece of paper, on the left-hand side, you go then to work out what the opposite is. The opposite must always be the positive. So let's say, for example, you don't want exhaustion anymore, you want energy. You don't want, oh God, I can't remember what I said now. I don't want to do the football run anymore. I'm going to ask a parent to lift share. I don't want to always be the one to do the shopping. I'm going to speak to my other half about him helping out instead. So the don't want list gives you a list of the things that you would prefer to do, or where you can make a change, and they again will give you some little action points for the things that you want to do. So going back to the first one, which didn't give you an action point, so going back to exhaustion, energy, okay, what are you going to do? What are the things you could do to give yourself more energy? So you could go to bed earlier, you could look at your diet and see if your diet needs improvement. You could take vitamins, you could go to the doctors and just make sure there's nothing underlying that's causing a problem. You could have better sleep hygiene, where you make sure that you don't watch TV before bed, or you don't have your phone in your bedroom, or you don't have caffeinated drinks. I'm not sure what that word was. Caffeinated drinks before bed, all of those sorts of things. So if you look at what it is that you do want, opposite what you don't want, then actually what you're going to end up with is a load of little steps that you can take to help you to get to that. So for me, I'm really tired, but I'm also aware that I've been going to bed around midnight, which is ridiculous. So actually, if I put my laptop down earlier in the evening, I would have more of an evening, which would mean that I'd be a bit more ready to go to bed. And if I went to bed when I actually felt tired, rather than waiting until I'm so far past it that suddenly going to bed seems like the most exhausting thing to do, that's one of the reasons I don't go to bed early, and that's one of the reasons I'm tired. So do you see what I mean? You're unpicking all the time, and I'm going to come back to the don't want list in a minute. And then the next thing that I want you to do, which is your third bit of acknowledgement and awareness, is make a list of what sparks joy. Now, if you're my client, you will have heard this story, so I do apologise, but when I moved out of my marital home, when my relationship broke down with my husband and we moved into the flat, I realised one day that when Owen went to his dad's, that I would just sort of sit. Katie, I'm guilty for going to sleep at 2 a.m. Yep, definitely feel you on that one. So I was very aware that when he was with his dad, I would just sit and not really do or be. I'd really wait for him to come home. I wasn't really doing anything else. And I realised one day what I was doing. I thought, this is ridiculous. I don't have a life for me. I'd had to create a character for such a long time. I'd actually forgotten what to do. And so I thought, I'm going to make a list. I'm going to make a list of all the things that spark joy in my life. My God, was that list hard to make. It took me about 3 weeks, and I shall remember it was a notebook with a pebble pattern, and there were like different purple pages inside. So there was a darker purple and so 4 sections in it. Remember, this notebook always will do. Making that list took me such a long time. The book was open on the table all the time. I lived in an open plan living area, so it's not like the book was hidden away. I really struggled to work out what sort of things gave me joy. And most of them were little things. The beach, obviously coastal, is very important to me. That's why it's part of the name of the business. The coast has always been a really important part of my life, and it helps put me back together when things are a bit rocky. So, there were lots and lots of different things on there. So when Owen gives me a shell, I think was one of them. Singing, specific programs and books that I liked at the time. All sorts of things went onto that list in the end, but it took a long time. It wasn't really a decent length for about 2 or 3 weeks. And then I just kept adding to it. And now whenever I start a new notebook, the first page is always things that spark joy. And sometimes they're pretty much the same. I never look at the old one when I'm writing the list though, because I like to see what differences there are on there. Prosecco's been on there a lot, many times. So it's important to kind of work out what sparks joy in your life as well. And we're going to utilise all 3 of these elements in a second. Okay, so let's talk about the different types of self-care. There are two main categories of self-care. The one that most people think about when you say self-care, which is the instant gratification things. That is things like having your nails done, putting a face pack on, going to a spa, getting nice food, having a glass of wine, lighting your candles. They're all the instant gratification ones. Now, don't just do them because you think that that's what everybody does when they want to do self-care. If you're going to lie in a bath and think, oh, I'm really bored now. So I quite like a bath as far as sitting in there for a few minutes, then kind of doing the pampery stuff that you kind of do. So like maybe put a hair mask on, use some body scrub, all of that kind of thing. That's quite nice. But once I've done all of that, I'm a little bit bored, if I'm hugely honest. And so I'm like, oh, I ought to sit here for a couple more minutes. I've even got one of those boards that you put across the bath that you can actually put your iPad in, and I still get bored, so I get out. So baths probably aren't one of my things. Please don't tell my best friend, she will completely disown me. So what sparks joy for you? Some of that list will be relevant to the things that give you instant gratification. So if you love your candles like I do, and actually I'm not a sales pitch, but I'm going to tell you anyway. I saw in Marks and Spencer's a couple of years ago a candle where when you lit the middle of the candle, it turned on fairy lights on the outside of the glass, which I loved. And then when it comes to an end, you can't refill it. So I was really disappointed. So I tried to refill it myself. I don't know what it was that made it work, but it certainly didn't work when I did that. But there was another one out from Marks and Spencer's, and I bought one for my birthday, and that's nearly run out. So I'm going to Marks and Spencer's on Thursday and buying another one. But if you like candles and fairy lights, that is absolutely a product for you. So instant gratification is lovely. Instant gratification is the thing that you do that's going to make you feel better now, or the thing that's going to bring you back to the present. So mindfulness as a practice is a bit more internal, but in the actual moment, it is an instant gratification thing. Like I feel really calm doing colouring or photography or something like that. It just does something in my mind that just kind of brings me right down, which I absolutely love. So whilst I'm talking about something else to do with the other types of self-care, tell me, what instant gratification stuff do you really love? Tell me in the comments what is, kind of important for you when it comes to, right, I'm going to treat myself to X tonight. What would that be that would help you to feel better? The other part of self-care is more of the inner work. And these are the things that you do that aren't the instant gratification. These are things that build up over time. These are things that become important rituals in your life, essentially, in order to keep you mentally well. So, oh God, that's gone cold. How disgusting. Should have drunk that quicker. Okay, so inner work. If you are on this page a lot, if you're in this group a lot, you know how much I love journaling. Journaling is so important. And it's one of the things that I'm really struggling with at the moment to add into the workbook, because I'm trying to get the right questions for you to ask yourself. So what have we got coming through? Lisa says yoga. Evie says music, needlework, mindless TV. Oh yeah, I love a bit of mindless TV. Although there's been some really good things on. Is anybody watching Inventing Anna as a complete aside on Netflix? Absolutely fantastic. If you haven't reached out for that one, do have a look. Lisa, walking. Yeah. See, walking always sounds amazing. Actually, no, that's not true. When I think about going for a walk, so I was working till 7:45 the other night, and my husband said to me, we're going to go for a walk after you finish work. And I was literally like, oh, do I have to? Whereas actually, whilst I was out on the walk, it was lovely and I really enjoyed it. Oh, we've got a new person joining us. Hello, Angela. Katie Jane, you're saying a bath, wax melts, cuddles with my cat. Absolutely. Who doesn't love a cuddle with the cat? Again, I would pick up Millie if I could, but she wouldn't let me. I struggle to journal. Have you got any tips to get into the habit? Yes, I will pop them into the book. In the workbook, sorry. And then you can utilise those prompts whenever you like. Getting into tips to get into the habit. Yes, I'm going to be talking about habits in a minute and how best to create them. So I'll definitely come to that. That's not a problem at all. One of the other things is about working out boundaries. Tracy also says audiobooks at night. Oh yes, listening to audiobooks. Absolutely love that. Yeah, definitely a thing for nice to listen to at night time as well, isn't it? The other thing is about boundaries. So when you were doing that list about where your life is at the moment, if you scored yourself really low in terms of the self-care that you give yourself in relation, let's say kids or partner, just for ease, then actually if you're giving yourself very little self-care, that also tells me that you're not putting boundaries in place with those people for them to do what they can to help you. So that's the areas where you need to first look at, what boundaries can I put in place? You know, where is this person taking the mick? Where actually is the line between what they can do and what I need to do for them? So one example is more of a caring sort of thing. So when my gran was still alive and she was in the nursing home, she went through a really, really bad spell where we thought we were going to lose her. But she did then, as she kept doing, improve. And she'd be like, what's everybody so worried about? Well, because you were really poorly, Gran. So she went through a period of time where she could not feed herself. So the home had to feed her, or if we were there, we would have to feed her. And it turns out she loved that, because when she started to get better, she got very shirty about the fact that the home was saying, no, you now can feed yourself, so you need to, because particularly with, well, no, I don't know if this is particularly with elderly people or not, but if somebody stops doing something, they stop really being able to do it as easily. So actually it was important for them to enable her to do that again for herself. Lisa, I really struggle with saying no. Okay, that's always a really big one and a really important one. Maybe I need to do like a live that specifically goes about that, because there will be benefits for you saying yes, like I want to be liked, I don't want them to get cross, I want to do this because it's a nice thing to do. But the line that I always tell clients is, you can help and be kind and be caring until it's at detriment to you. When it's at detriment to you, you've crossed that line. So if when you are thinking about saying yes to something, think about the impact that you're going to have. Think about the impact on you by doing that. You're going to be more exhausted. It's going to cost you money. You're going to grow in resentment. You know, think about the cost of saying yes to that situation and see if there's a way of saying no. I think also people think saying no will cause conflict, but it doesn't need to. It doesn't need to be conflict at all. I struggle to find the worth in myself for self-care. That's a bit of a funny one, Tracy, because actually, if you don't do self-care because you don't find yourself worthy of doing it, you'll never find the worth. The worth is in doing the self-care. That's where you start to begin to feel like you're worthy of doing it. So it is a little bit of a chicken and egg thing. And the self-care has got to come as part of the feeling worthy of doing it. You can't wait for that to happen before you start to make those changes and those healthy habits. So inner work is just as important. And that leads me on to this instant gratification issue of self-care and food. So in the comments, who eats their emotions? Me, definitely. We were at Slimming World and doing some psychology of slimming during the, what do they call it? Image therapy, which is like the group afterwards. And then, oh, sorry, Sarah. I can never quite tell which one of you it is. So what was I saying? I've lost my train of thought. Oh yes, we were doing this image therapy thing and they were talking about, emotional eating and what have you, and there was a page where you could tick like your triggers. So it's like, what are your trigger foods? So I was ticking those. What are your triggers in terms of emotions? And I ticked them all. Like, I will eat because I'm happy, so I need to celebrate. I will eat because I'm sad, because it'll make me feel better. I'll eat because I'm cross. I will eat, in fact, I was really cross when I was having a row with my husband a few weeks ago. The first thing I did was went to the fridge and grabbed the Prosecco out, even though it's not really a loud night for alcohol. But I was so cross, I was like, I don't care. So I can sometimes kind of go into that. Tracy and Leanne say, me. Yes, absolutely. Eating your emotions, super, super easy. And obviously the more emotions that you tick, so it wouldn't be quite so bad if I only ate when I was sad. And when I say eat, I don't mean just have my dinner. I mean as in overeat to excess. But also you have to think about the price that you're going to pay for that. So yes, that feels great in terms of instant gratification. If I have like, I don't know, some chocolate or some ice cream or something, oh, it's lovely. But then when I go to Slimming World and I know I'm not going to see a loss on the scales, that really pisses me off. Or I know that if I had an improvement to my diet, I'd have more energy and probably better skin, hair and nails. Or what if you've got an underlying health problem where if you have that instant gratification food, you're going to feel poorly. So you have too much sugar, but you're diabetic. Or you have too much lactose, but you're actually lactose intolerant, and that's going to give you like tummy ache and pain for the next few days. So self-care and food you have to be a little bit careful of. It's okay to have instant gratification with food if it's in moderation, but if you're reaching for the ice cream every single time, then it's about thinking about, right, okay, what else is on my what sparks joy list? Is there something else that I could do instead? Okay, so in terms of boundaries, we're now on to some more of the inner work. So boundaries, I've said to you about whatever you've scored people. So have a look at each person you serve and ask yourself, what can I start, what can I stop, and what can I continue? So there might be something that you can do a little bit differently, or there might be something, the start might be, I'm going to start asking them to do X for me because I'm doing Y. What do you want to stop with them? So sometimes that's going to be saying yes or being at their beck and call every second of the day and what have you. And the continue will be looking at, okay, what do I do with this person that's a bit healthier? I'm going to carry on doing that. And if you think that they would be receptive, share with them, talk to them. And as I've said to you before, if it's with your children, you can increase their independence, and that's really, really empowering. And if you struggle with boundaries, practice with yourself first. So one of the best ways to practice your boundaries is around eating if you are an emotional eater. So if you say to yourself, right, this boundary that I'm going to put in place for me right now is I can only have, like, so for me at the moment, barring that argument, I can only have Prosecco on a Friday, Saturday or Sunday night. I can only have chocolate that isn't Slimming World chocolate on a Friday, Saturday and Sunday. So there's just things like that that you can put in place, and just remember why you're doing it in the first place. So it's about living your life on purpose. So again, a bit more of the inner work side of things rather than the instant gratification. So use your don't want list. Work out what you do want. Work out the steps to make it happen. And these can be things that, you know, you can add to with your hopes, your dreams, your new ways of being that will make things a lot easier for you. And review it regularly. Like, do your don't want list. It's such a simple thing to do. You just need a piece of A4 paper that you fold in half. And then what you do when you've got your do want list is you rip the other side off. So that's just what you're left with. Not your don't wants, but just your do wants. And keep regularly reviewing them. Is this still what I want for me? Keep doing the don't want list again. What don't I want that's still kind of happening for me? What do I need to change? And see if things keep coming up time after time. If they come up time after time, you're not addressing them. And that's something that you need to look at in terms of self-care. Okay, so that's all about the inner work. Now creating the habit. Okay, so step 3, creating the habit. Why do you want to do whatever this new habit is? Why do you want this new behaviour? So I could say, I'd really like to lose weight, so I'm going to get up at 6 o'clock and have a run every morning. I don't want to run. I don't even like running. I've got slightly bad knees, and they always say, don't they, that running is quite bad for the impact on your joints, and there are other things that you can do. I don't like 6 o'clock in the morning. 6 o'clock in the morning is the time I should be up if I'm getting on a plane. I'm definitely not a morning person. So already I've allocated a heck of a lot of things to, I don't want to do that. So if I tell myself that I want to lose weight and I'm going to start running, I'm not going to start running. That's just not going to happen. What I need to look at is what I like doing. I am much more likely to go to the gym at night or go swimming and what have you, to make sure that I've got somebody who's telling me, you know, what I need to do. I don't really like going to the gym, but actually I do acknowledge that I feel better when I'm there. So I probably would do that, probably join the gym again and do it. So work out why it is that you want to. If you want to make a change, what is the reason? Because if you don't know what your motivation is, you're not going to make this a habit. The second thing, can you do it? Can I run? No. Do I have the equipment for running? No, I think you're supposed to have special running shoes to help you, but actually, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. And then I'll get cross with myself. I'm not saying that you have to be perfect at everything the first time. Of course you don't. It's okay to be brave, to be bad at something new. But I don't really want to be only able to run for a minute or 2 minutes. That's going to be really soul destroying for me. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'd rather start off with something else. I'm more likely to be able to do a half-hour ballet class than I am to run. As my son tells me, I actually walk quicker than I can run anyway. And then how will you remind yourself to do it? And how often are you going to remind yourself? So that's the part that becomes like, how am I going to be prompted to doing this? So let's say, for example, you do want to go running. Then maybe what you will do when you get in from the school run is pick up your trainers that are in the hallway when you get home from school and go out on a run then. You know, it's about how do you fit it into your day. So for me, my journal goes on my bedside table every day. So once I've used it, it goes on my bedside table because that's where I'll do my gratitude and wins for the day when I'm sitting in bed ready to go to sleep. It helps to prep me for good sleep, and therefore it's much easier to do. If you need to, you can set alarms on your phone. That's obviously completely doable as well to remind you to do some of these new behaviours. It won't stop the bad days, any of this, but it will lessen them and it will shorten them. So you may start to find that they are fewer and further between. So what are your warning signs that you are not doing so well? What are the triggers that you recognise for you? So for me, I have like a little morning ritual that I do, which involves reading out loud some affirmations. It also involves tasks that I need to do, like appointment reminders for clients and things. But all of the nice to-dos that help me, I would just stop doing. So I wouldn't be reading my affirmation pages out loud. I wouldn't be looking at my journal that tells me my future story that I want to manifest. All of those sorts of things would go by the by. In addition, I stopped singing in the car. I feel really low on energy and low mood. I start to get anxiety symptoms. So one of my main anxiety symptoms is I get the shakes quite badly in my hands, and I get headaches. And the further I go, having ignored the signs, the more physical they become. So they'll start off with not feeling too great and what have you, but then it will be anxiety because I need you to be able to see the symptoms, Sarah. Headache, I need you to be able to feel the symptoms, Sarah, because I've given you all the clues and you are not stopping. So it's really, really important that we don't allow it to get to the physical symptoms too often, because we should be listening before that, and we will have been given an awful lot of things before that, and an awful lot of triggers before that. So what happens on a bad day? Bad days can be triggered by absolutely nothing, or there could be bad news or a situation that's happened or some sort of trigger. So on the bad days, you might feel imposter syndrome, low mood, can't do it, lacking energy, fear, doubt, frustration, resentment, irritability. There are a ton of different triggers that you can have. Lisa says, I feel the physical effects of stress and tension. Then I have to spend time trying to get that sorted before I can get myself back on track. I annoy myself, to be honest. Absolutely. So if we haven't listened and then these other things start happening and then we have to do more to kind of get them back on track, we end up feeling cheesed off at ourselves that we didn't pay any attention to it. And it's now got to this, which has taken so much hard work. So putting these things in place, so knowing what works for you for instant gratification and what works for you for the inner work, is so important to be able to stop yourself from getting to that. Katie Jane, I start giving things up. I'm less inclined to go into the craft room. Gosh, I never thought I'd see that, Katie Jane. And I stop leaving the house and isolate myself. Yeah, I can be a real home bird because I don't really have any need to leave house for work. Working from home, obviously you can get quite insular. I really like being at home, so it doesn't bother me, but I do know that it's a bit of a trigger if I'm not going out so much. So yeah, very, very important. And of course, craft or any form of creative is like a really good outlet for us, so it's so important. But one of the important things that I've learned over the last few years is that there are opportunities in a bad day. So the opportunities that I have discovered in a bad day are I stop. That's the first thing. I rarely stop, but actually then I do stop. And then that gives me time to think. I isolate and get frustrated and want to be on my own. Yeah, so we can kind of like push other people away, don't we? Like, oh, can't be bothered, don't want to, and what have you. So when you recognise those sorts of triggers, it's important that you know that they're your triggers and that you need to do something about it. So other opportunities in a bad day gives you time to think about what's going on, what you're not so happy about. It also gives you the opportunity to be a bit more innovative in your thinking. So, okay, so this situation's happening and I don't like it, but what can I do about it? What can I control? It gives us the opportunity to rest, even if that means that we binge watch Netflix, which, let's face it, on the odd occasion is a really nice thing to be able to do. But to come back out of that, you're going to need a mixture of this inner and instant things that we've been talking about. So your instant gratification list, you pick some things off there. The inner work, you pick some questions off there, maybe do a bit of journaling, look at, or the other things that I've said for you to do during this. It's just an opportunity to rest your head against the wall before you work out where it is that you want to go next. And if you are feeling like self-indulgent, self-pitying, wallowing during that time, that's absolutely fine. But put an end date on it. Put an end expiry time where actually then you have to pick yourself up, dust yourself off and keep going. That's the most important thing, is that comes to an end. So to recap, we've talked about what self-care is and why it's vital. I've talked you through the 3 steps, which are awareness, inspired action, and how to create the habit. I've given you some tools to help you create your own self-care plan and talked about the different types of self-care and how it's important to make sure you're doing a mix of those. We've looked at, and you're going to be recording, what your warning signs are, and also what the opportunities are and how to deal with bad days. So, has that been useful? Has there been something that you've got from that that's going to be really useful? I will obviously get the workbooks out to you as quickly as I possibly can, but just let me know in the comments whether you found this straightforward, whether you found it easy to follow, whether you've got some things that you can use. That would be really, really helpful. So if this has been of interest to you, this is only a tiny snippet of the work that I do. I can help you very much in terms of making sure that you are starting to move forward, not just with self-care and what have you, but also just in general. So if you are somebody who has struggled with a toxic relationship in your past or present, it is likely that as a result of that, your self-esteem and your self-confidence have seriously dropped, which is, completely understandable in the circumstances. So this is about giving you the opportunity to decide, who do you want to be in the future? Who is it that you want to either go back to being or become as a result of it? So it's really, really important that you then think about whether you are ready to make a change, and I would love to have a chat with you about it. So please do book an initial contact chat with me. There's no pressure whatsoever for you to commit to anything, but it'd be really interesting to see where you're at, to talk about the things that I do in terms of helping the women to move forward that I work with. So although predominantly I consider myself to be coach, the reason that I do coaching as opposed to counselling is to then make sure that it's not just talking about the problem, but it's also talking about how to move you forward afterwards. Everything I do is highly personalised. Toxic relationships aren't a must, but that's just my speciality. Everything is about moving you forward. So I'm glad that you've enjoyed it. Evie, thanks. Sarah, enjoyed. Leanne, thanks, lovely. I will send you the books across so that you can have a look at those. Managed to keep it to an hour. Woohoo! So yeah, have a lovely evening, everybody. And let me know what you thought. You can either message me or pop some comments into the chat afterwards. And then, it would be lovely to hear from some of you if you would like to start exploring working together one-to-one to see how we can move you forward. So take care. Thanks for being with me this evening. Lots of love. Bye.